Sangoyo Kande Laje Wenje Toga Raga Shuzang Bongde Chunzen Chunjen Yabo Gwenjen Losa Seda Jeba Nede Shesos Dunje Nanga Sinde Bende Chezu Lama Jebe Zunga Dalo Debe Suna Shinjo Tenpa Yeje Geja Sheje Chungwen Jabe Loje Gezang Nawe Jinju Leshe Tabe Beje Lame Zebe Tongde Tenbe Denden Laja Yewo Cheyo Nazo Medo Chechen Dobe Nangzen Teja Weisha Yidu Chudin Jazo Sena Xingzhuo Chela Cheba Kanxi Tongmen Dune Saba Lunga Yiso Migi Jiji Chebarang Dongba Sumji Medun Ningnen Juba Zhabu Soso Ningmen Dude Mandun Zhula Cheje Bangben Denjo Denyu Gongbo Jeje Labjin Zeba Daja Samban Tabi Chizu Laman Damba Keda Shugu Kala Tenzin Dorjee Cheda Samben Deje Sema Sabje Cheje Chawa Abdu Namda Vise Yingle Xingba Songzhu Gula Chado Minga Tame Nangu Sugu Rabda Sidi Badu Minu Demba Taso Chini Sabi Gewa Tendan Zhuwa Gunla Kangben Cheburan Chizu Losan Zhaba Tenbe Ningbo Mingme Zebe Dejin Jenre Chime Kenbe Wangbo Jambe Tubo Mali Zhomze Sanwe Kanjin Kebe Zogjen Zonga Losan Tabe Shabla Sowa Mime Zebe Dejin Jenre Chime Kenbe Wangbo Jambe Tubo Mali Zhomze Sanwe Kanjin Kebe Zogjen Zonga Losan Tabe Shabla Sowa Mime Zebe Dejin Jenre Chime Kenbe Wangbo Jambe Tubo Mali Kanjin Kebe Zogjen Zonga Losan Tabe Shabla Sowa Panden Zawe Lama Rinpo Daso Jivoro Benden Denshu Kadin Chenpe Kone Jesu Kusun Toji Ngudu Zendo Panden Zawe Lama Rinpo Daso Ningara Benden Denshu Kadin Chenpe Kone Chodan Tumu Ngudu Zendo Panden Zawe Lama Rinpo Daso Ningara Benden Denshu Kadin Chenpe Kone Jesu Changju Ningbu Ba Denpa Yu Mazan Jume Shira Baru maje manga nam so so rari yeche cheyu teson gebe yumla chaze lo de ta gade para samgade bode ye so ha de ta gade para samgade bode ye so ha de ta gade para samgade bode ye so gere dongda jajo xiewa mede nebe yandan dewa da tenba daje denya I would like to remind every one of ourselves to take a moment and cultivate the highest form of motivation. We call it Bodhisattva motivation, or the altruistic motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the sake of all other sentient beings. So with that kind of at least contrived bodhicitta, altruistic motivation, we should all participate in this Bodhisattva's discourse on Prajna Paramita, the perfection of wisdom gone beyond. So where we left off in this Bodhisattva guide by the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Shantideva, we are looking at refuting self-cognition or apperception. Tibetan term is Rangrig, in the system of Chittamatrins or mind-only school.
nghe tông tự hi về về tông tự so ye ta nhị je me ba jo me ba ta ke se na se da mi hi je tông da ni hi de ba da yi shi so ji yi hi ba ta nhị de nang za bi yi de da de gu ze da de ne ga ba ra jo me de ne tông de hi su yi je khai ja du de je ba lo ma de je de lo le je mo天气就我让我呢，这把人在北电视你，可以动人家早我就是把烟别，也不知道我天天这把看这把烟打个多个家烟，把人对不起。他一的那时候结束说的，大家每个的早动人没结就的早结。동네 매지징 저 좀 나나 다니에 대다 이세도 가와에면 저기 롱다 리베 고고 나서 나서지 롱르 라야 가자라 소베세라 롱르 라야 가바스 베지 가바나야 다신 샤시 다니제나야 강양도 강양 저스메 와봐 세다제 된데 좀 이시로 대다가 통도사지 수다서 된진 코베 자와 된비 배 등미에 바보에 자디메 도 고와세와 된바 저데바 송 우다드야 스브르 스브 시대 강바시 되네 아니 다도 내 저르면은 이게 통해서 게 제세야 중에만 그게 제바잔 내가 타고도 심지어 어디 저거 건지 시대 길로를 저르면은 통도서 유용하면 되면은 제바 매베스 내 통노 토시베서 통도서 게 다니지 매와 타고 시다 어디다 시다 이 다니디야 내 통도 토세 다니 지대는 여러 디가 여마라 그래서 뒤에 이제 전반면에 통도 내 토세 전반 이거 말이 뒤에도 배는 뭐뭐도 전에도 뭐뭐는 뭐부터 올라면은 저 뭐뭐 또 소리로 전반이야 여마라 제가 나이 얘를 뭐뭐 통해 뒤에서 무슨이 기 통계라면 저게 뭐뭐 통해서 근데 이거 통제 미시제별로 지금 말이지. 어디 말이야 이제 장르여서 어디서 왔다.
So according to Chitamatrins or Samsamba, mind-only school of thought, there has to be cognition or apperception or rangri. Without which it is not possible to have recollection or remember whatever we have seen or heard or experienced, right? But conventionally, we all can say that, you know what, oh, I remember seeing a blue last time, or I remember hearing something, right? So we're able to have such recollection or remembrance. And Chitamatrins says that's because we have something called self-cognition or a perception, right? If you saw blue, so there was a perception that perceived blue. So there has to be something that remembers that perception of the blue. Otherwise, how can you say, I saw blue, right? That's how the Chitamatrins are trying to make their case for self-cognition.
대통도 시라 유유진 권위장 주대 제발 때네 맞아봐 제대로 내지 걸 정원의 제발 제베 대신이 커야 동에서 주시와 임베 대디게 임베세 대버도 어디 리바양다게세 도저히 임베 시로 타이도 나zam지 수소 대다 가미고데 대장지 동에 메제진 저저버 탐제라야 나오냐 tanyi da yuwa shi su da jidang di tenyo kaya di ya tondo yang di xe ne miyesi la kor ma da tanyi di sukcha da soba di miyesi la kor yor di gakpa yo ma risi xe da rangri me di tanyi di namsha ka xa shogori ko sukcha di suk tonga di dha tuwa di yo di xa shogori tili nenga yo ma risi zidela ya tanyi di gakpa ma risi gaya di tonga tanga gakpa yo ma risi tanyi di gakpa me zang tili ya tondu soyi namsha me di jong yo ma risi wata.
So we are on page 143 of the English translation of the guide by Stephen Batchelors, published by the Tibetan Library in India. And we are on page 140 of the translation of the guide by Padmakara Translation Group. And then there could be other texts I don't have. So now the Pasangha Madhyamikans, they are telling Chitamatrins that what we are trying to refute here is true existence, right? We're not refuting the conventional existence of sensual objects, form, sound, smell, taste, all of those things. Those things do exist conventionally, so we are not arguing you about the conventional existence of forms and sound and smell, all of those things. What we are saying is that these things do not truly exist, so that's what we are trying to refute here. So that's the Pasanghikas trying to pinpoint to the Chitamatrins.
Karsa tongda baka tanyi ka mare chidang sukso nawa sa tuda be yuzi sukso jara so toba nawa zangi de dunga ka jik mare sanje de jaja mo kan ke indu sukso so to ordi nimo ji mare cheda di goya nimo ja de sukso rangshi jwa se ba tel den ja inza da kaya de kaya res di ka ya ti doda ta du ro de ti ya rangri yo zang tiki dhubshe shaa di in rangri yo marzi o ti gaya di gaga gyuzin rabde ti o tiri shata.
So Pasangika Madhyamikans are telling the Chitamatrins that we are not agreeing with you, to refute the conventional existence of form, sound, smell, and all of those things. But those things do exist. And there's nothing wrong to have perceptual experiences of form, sound, smell, all of those things, right? As a matter of fact, arahats, those who have achieved complete liberation, and enlightened beings of Buddhas, so Buddhas do perceive forms, they hear sound, right? So they do experience all of those things. So we are not arguing that the sensual objects do exist and they are perceivers of the sensual objects. What we are arguing with you is this, that these things do not truly exist as you assert, So in order to establish, true existence, that you are invoking this concept of self-cognition or apperception. So we are taking an issue with that, right? So Pasangika is saying that so the issue of argumentation is whether or not things do exist intrinsically, truly or not. So that is the point of contention, not the conventional existence of the sensual objects and the perceivers of these objects.
Rongo chwa sen da rangshi chwa yo marsi ka go ma shida yo marsi la go marsi te ta te sa de te zo wa o te shida te ngombo chen ngombo jida no so so yen li yu de to ma ni na jo chen ba jia yo ma la o ji ji ba jia me da ni yu yen yu ngombo zo tong ne jo li yu ngombo tong chen yo du 유고모 동아치 대장도 내니 유제고 운지 미히디 된거 알았어. 제가 뭔지 미키딩에 그런 제가 카드를 거용해야 희바면은 저 제가 지금 말이스. 유카리는 또 많이 올라 될 지시자요 말이스. 우다 주제 타도 좀 해서 거다. 그러는 이 지들이 뒤지 제바지 있어서 거라.
So Prasangikas are telling Chitta Martins that we agree with you that if one has not perceived or experienced something, then there is nothing to recollect or to remember, right? We agree with you. But what you are saying is that, there has to be self-cognition of that perception of whatever we saw or heard, right? And that's not necessary. In the case of blue, right? Yes, if you have never experienced blue or seen blue, there's nothing to recollect. But the recollection works, without need for self-cognition, because when you remember that I saw blue, the object, right, isn't it? Along with it, you also remember the subjective perception experience of the blue, But recalling that you saw blue, the object, together with that, you also remember your experience of the blue or your perception of the blue. So there is no need for a self-cognition of the perception of the blue, right? So that's what we are telling you. That's what the Prasangikas are saying.
ini tejija mewa de ini tenyo gen do giri ini karsa semzambe niga doero seti de da shada ngomo tembe tejija ngel ngomo to go dos tinna yungunji mihi tebala ngeni ko munji mihi koran ke de toge hwa goris o tile rang si ora seti yoris senzo de gozung si ora ti gozung si de la tenyo de dagmars Gomers. Ngomongel Madonna Goboja Mardi, Munzi Mihi, Trebala, Il Munzi Mihi, Tongue, Hivagon, the Dogo Maris. Harrison Munzi Mihi, the young woman in Javayor was.
No.
Nobody using Munzi Mihi, the Eugene Gloyenza, and the young woman trained the Eugene Law, the young trained with mother. Eugene Law may usually Kazan Chaya Maris.
No, sir.
And nearly you Munzi Mihi, young Rory Mena, Munzi Yam to change over so they lay
on. So both Chitta Martins or Man Only School and Prasangika Mathemicians agree that if one has not seen blue earlier, there's nothing to recall. So they don't have any disagreement with that. Okay, in terms of recalling the blue. But what the Chitta Martins are asserting is that in order to recollect the perception of the blue, there has to be self-cognition. Just as, if there was no perception of a blue, you cannot recall it. They are using the same mindset to say, so in order to recall the subjective perception of the blue, so there has to be a perception of that, And Madhyamika says there's no need for that. The reason is that when you recall blue, the object, what you perceive, along with all, you will also recall your perception of the blue. Because that is the relationship between subject and the object, isn't it? It's impossible just to recall blue and not the perception of the blue. That's impossible because they are correlated, isn't it? So that is the point of contention between Chitta Martins, Mind Only School, and Madhyamicans, right? They both agree with recalling the blue part, but what about recalling the perception of the blue? So Chitta Martins said there has to be a perception, and Madhyamicans said there's no need because it's just based on the subject-object relationship that once you recall the subject or the object, then you can also recall the subject as well.
What is it? That question, 토모에도 문제 잡아야 매와 나시 문제 미히게 코로나 또 동결하면은 문제 미히 생겨요. 뭐 샘섬에서야 뒤지고로 다 엄마에서는 생겨서는 된다고 말했어. 뭐먹을 마다는 문제 미히 지금 말했지 문제 미히 Trebala ngene ngunzi mihi tongi lo ngene dogo marisi. Ti miko yuzi kare sena. Yu ngoba da ngunzi mihi niko yudu yujin jaa ya zang. Cheong du zang nyamdo cheong karima tochi yu pandi yujin cheong sa yujin pandi yu cheong sa dire yo marisi. Kuni kati na nyamdo ligo risi. Seta ngene ya ngoba nyungengi kasa ngunzi mihi nyamdo nyama go mari yu nyamdo nyama ka rangi. Ngunzi mihi nyamdo cheong to risi. Da simsa wasina wadi koji ngombo trebala ngene ngombo togo na isi ngunzi mihi trebala ngene ngunzi mihi tongi lo shi ngun dogo risi. Kuni midin sa te so.
So Geshe has basically repeated his explanations just for the clarification's sake that both Chitta Matrins and the Prasangika Madhyamikans agree that in order to recall blue, you should have seen blue first, isn't it? Without the perception of the blue, there's nothing to recall. But now the Chitta Matrins, where they differ is that they said, now just as you agree with us that there has to be perception of the blue first in order to recall blue, so we also say that in order to recall, right, the perception of the blue itself, there should have been a perception of that perception. And that's what we call self-cognition or a perception, isn't it? And so Madhyamikans say that parallel logic is unnecessary because it's impossible to recall blue without recalling the perception of the blue, because those two things are intimately related to each other based upon the relationship between blue as an object and perception of that blue already happened, that you are able to recall them together. It's impossible to recall one without the other, isn't it? It's impossible to recall blue without the perception of the blue. So that's those are the standpoints of Chitta Matrins and Prasangika Madhyamikans.
Ote da dikal kharte ko sen dide ke kharse yu rangshi mewa se demba mewa te ya ko te me insa ene denzi de khoya sa te me insa ene yira dajun zu ka ka tongyu to yo del den she do go ris ko je denzi khoya sa so yira dajun ya khwal chö sa ro khwal chö is bi tongyu to go ris o de dine te go ris kharse ne denzi de khoya sa is la do as 세상 코아 방송에 대해서 보고 세상 일어나 최이 담을 또 어디 땡고 있어 어디서 왔다 일어나 최이 담을 또 요 말했다 니도 또 요 말했어 와 뭐다 이 세상의 연속의 요리시야지요 계시 거시지 태교도 마도 늘 말했어야지 어디 들으면서 와
최이 담을 거로게
라
최이 담을 또 요. What's also contained in this whole argumentation is that grasping at true existence, Tenzin, is the root cause of samsara, being in samsara. Okay, and in order to uproot that, one has to realize emptiness of true existence. And Prasangika Madhyamikans assert that the arahats of Sharvaka and Patika Buddhas have realized emptiness as it is. As a matter of fact, they have realized the emptiness of phenomena because they have uprooted the grasping at true existence, isn't it? So that is also part of the argumentation here. And I think that's based upon the relationship between subject and object, right?
어디에다 근데 거기 믿어서 어디에다 원보 제마도 원보 또 미기는 저거지 뭔지 미기 제마도 또 미기 또 제마도 저거 말이지 거기 믿어서 어디시 제래다 다 숨바슴레 유만티에다 현디 주부가 보니 심레 시소 강바 쪽에서 심자와 나를 수소 시르기 돈 줘봐 나와다지 돈 마저에 난 집에 셈 주마다 부스 수소 대신 매신 알 간제 심이 주마나 Teze Kangshik, Kang Tong, Xie, Nang Semda, Xi Su, Geshe member Denbar, Trubna, Dendrip Jijik the Trub, the Shin member, Denbar Trubna, Dendrip Jig the Trola. Tibetan the Tanya, Tadi Demi, Jig the Trogobies. Tell her, Tongza Tongzi, Tongzi, Birumara, George, Oma Base, John Java, Pon de Nese, Dene, Tini Geshe member, the member, the Debe, the Chick Young, without Hena, Suso, Tonda Be, Muvadona, no other, Dengola, Titan, Suso Shiru to the Noah, young Noah, Debe, Sidan, the same Geshe Menshi, Mende, Ingo, Jode, Suso Shiru told the tribute to Mubada. Nang Seni, Seni Tatibe, maybe shares. Seni Tatibe, shares, whatever that. That is Suzo, no, that some of us in Suzo, Shiru, don't know that too much. Shiru told the Yamar is lower. Tatina, in the sense of Suzo, Shiru don't know the men, similar Miego, Timena, and the Suzo, no, Miego, Tagaru, Suzo, no, you're it is similar to the audience. Could you say words in the debate with the debate of a chicken in the Tade Demi chicks the jigger, chicken the jigger, so the dogma, or the Tade Demi chicken and so the Shibani, the chick that or the Meza, and the Koni Karza, watching my race, Mutai, debate of watching my debate of watching in the chicken. You go about the usual machine, check the Timber, could you watch about Maris, or take a watching the chicken go, what had in the Tadi Demi, you go, Jimmy Toshin, she did the world, did it, because the butter chicken, Tadi Demi chicken, the chicken, you shadow, what is the usual Tadi Gura. So the Tadi Mumbo machine. The butter with the chicken and chicken was Teddy Demi chicken in the Yudi non shacking Mars. What did that tell you this or that?
So, the other day came sometimes Chiru now without the Yomar Lama, the Chiru now Yomar Slag Yomaroge.
No, that matters you.
Chiru now you were killing her.
No, you were killing her.
Let the woman
Now you're the day, No, somebody was Shiva lost Shiru Yomarzoro. That tell you get Shiva lost you killing her.
Now that car is possession that world.
Because Shiva uses on Tanya, Google how the Ujekakashi, you Kokashagami, when you watching the butter of you chicken, chicken, you the Eugene Yashato Morris.
Thank you, Boggy, Chiru now at Eugene Zeta de Shower.
Zeta de Shower. So Miki Sharo, Suzo Ten, so then the Mishija, the Dada, Nahija, the Kelingara.
No. So Chitta Martins, assert that there are no externally existent objects or Chitta, right? Things appear to exist externally to the perceptions, but actually they don't exist that way. And the external appearances are, as a matter of fact, in the nature of the perception themselves, right? That's how they talk about non-duality. Now Prasangika mathematicians assert that there are external objects or external existent objects. So now Prasangika mathematicians are asking Chitta Martins that, do you mean that the external appearances of the objects and their subjective perceptions are, truly existent one, right? And if you say they are truly existent one, right? Because you talk about non-duality, then they cannot be separated as subject and objects. They just have to be one, But that's not the case. Just as we can see that conventionally there are perceptions, conventionally there are objects perceived by the perceptions, So there could not be truly existent one. Truly existent one means they are identical and they cannot be separated, right, from each other. Whereas, we know that when the forms are in the preview of visual consciousness, then the visual consciousness perceptions arise. When the sounds are in the vicinity of the auditory perception, then auditory perception exists. So we say that the sounds and the auditory perceptions, forms and visual perceptions, they are different. And they are substantially different, actually, according to Prasangika mathematicians, And how can you say they are like truly existent one? In which case, then you can't talk about subject and object, and they just have to be same. We're just basically saying that if you say that the blue and the perception of blue is exactly the same thing, right? Which makes no sense,
No semi tate sheros. O deda koi jeji maris. Suzo se shiro yuri pasha gaji. Shiba de ya sibje gitsu shaga. Koi be gesar be tate iris. Koi ngoji dire shiba dani yonto maris. What is what that
So the Prasangika mathematicians are telling the Mathrins that you cannot regard object and subject as truly existent one, right? Subjective perceptions are contained within the mental continuum of individuals, isn't it? But the objects are out there. They are not contained within the mental continuum. So we say that these are two different entities, whereas you are saying they are the same entity, and in which case, then they cannot be subject and object, right? That's,
Similar, Geshe Meno Shenani, so, Zimbe Shivani, Dembe Ngova Meva, never Tade. She don't know, so, number Tida, Zumba Kelala. There are Geshe Member David Source, or did that Zumba Kelan said, no, the mother. Shiro told the Nangor, Shiro told the Yomers go, Dikizara, Dikela, this was that. Che Gola, young assembly, the Menashina, Suza de Bengo Mevata, similar, him member, similar Dabats in so she Sheva and Tongs, or the similar the Hemaris, similar, Dani Tangiris. And she that Jumata was a Tondi nice, so you took the battle of Maya. Tanya Tan the Simji, Nick Bum, Tasha even do what they do. Mixi, Tashi, now she's some ye took you, each Shiva took you. The battle of Maya, Tanya Tan do say, Tashi the Chi, she did the. They go over songs, she says away to Genie. The bottom to Shever a big but Sims away to Genie. The bottom to Shever Jeva Miri by 10. Oma Barago Lola, Tasha so, Tashi. Niki de Tonshi Yiga, the Mamma Yamba Minyang Tanya do Union but do Demba me Tanya do Tasha Tashi Teva Judea, Demba Mena, me Goshin. Tanya don't do you go near you so. Tena ngar kangze chuba yu mena yuma kange mi banjur she ye oma bala jonje ba minjuk ba mase chu samza be jang tongshi nye la deba chomo ji che war che me she war long de la den ze so she ba was de sa da de karsa samza be de tongshi ta de me se de de kaya de ya da shi sim de ganga se deba chobe meya tanye za de da shi de ni so sha gu ris ti me de go ba so karsa du go ba so shi sim za be tongshi ni deba chomo che je ba me ri ba de ne oma ba rang lo la ta za so la ta ji mi shi so de tongxin yi ga de ba me nyam da ta yi de yi ba de o de da se da ba se na en chiru me no ge ba de ba to yi se go o de da de te ba ri ko chiru da no ge ba ni ga no zo yi ba ji ba ri de ba mo ba ji ba ri se de ko ni ji yu ne yu ni mene mene re ma de no shiba de ba yes shi su so de ba shiba da ni ma de shi to de me se ati de cheba she to maris o this was the gaji.
So Chitta Martins assert that mind is truly existent, whereas there are no external objects or external existent objects. Things appear to exist externally to the mind, but they really don't exist that way, right? That's the big assertion. And now the Prasangika mathematicals are telling them that if you say that there are no externally existent objects, right? They appear as such, but they don't exist, then it should be the same with the mind itself. The mind should not truly exist, right? How can it be that one, right, appears to exist externally, don't exist, and other one is truly existent? You know, they have to be the same, right? In whatever way they exist, so whereas the Prasangika mathematicians are saying that we conventionally assert that subject and object are different entities. You know, objects exist over there, so to speak, and subjects exist within the continuum of individuals, isn't it? So they both are empty of true existence.
What is Karsa Kangi ma jo she oma be jong she wa men she wa se ba she yi sim sa be jo tong xin yi de bo zhe mo ri che shi ba je che ba bi she ba lu de de nan ze so wo she ba wo shi ba da she da da ri ba tu gao de da la ene shi ru me se ene no shi be da ni se a je shi ba de mo zhe shi ru tong de me yi se wo de che ba je to mo du se 세고 타이도 요도 요즘 도다가 매님을 시켜낸 거리스. 어디서 왔다 거기. 중동으로 제서서는 대야가서 거기 시름이 시바 데버저서는 아니 디베 레버저 제버요 말이스. 제 그러니까 찍박히 계단은 이제 야가서 왔다.
So Prasangika mathematicians are telling the Matrins that you cannot say that there are no externally existent objects, but mind is truly existent. You cannot say that the objects are in the nature of the mind itself, right? Because there are a lot of contradictions, inconsistencies there. And because the objects and minds, they have to exist in the same way, whatever, right? I think it's better for you to say that both objects and mind ultimately don't exist, and conventionally they do exist. So I think it is very nice to follow. That's a beautiful position you should take, literally, right? Prasangikas are telling them, your position has so many loopholes. So I'm telling you, it's beautiful to say that both object and subject exist conventionally, and they don't exist ultimately. Okay,
어디 다 시바다요 나세 뭐뭐 되저 된디 요가바 네세 게데 소 강바시 데세 세자와 나리 게데 숭지 제타데데 나이 코와소 런시 도베 도다베 베 군다셔는 추시 남시다부 희망게 뭐뭐 되버저베세 히틴신 거데 추바탐질라 추시 데바 레유게시 페나 토요라 라 메당 타자르 주드 추발라양 추발라 메당 주메 메장 토요다 타자 데바 유고바 셰노스 어디다 생자베티스고다 아니 게 슈카리나 비게 시도데 다기도데 당요다 지요샤쇼 당요스는 디스고지 커사 디스고 거지 배 차기 루샤기 세드 비게 뭐뭐도데 거지 디스고다 도스는 뭐뭐데 지요 이스 그래서 그 뭐뭐데 가세 시나 그 뭐뭐 많이 배워야 말아 뭐뭐도 이제 가르치는 거 뭐뭐랑 뭔지 로도 말아 어디서 뭐뭐도 지요 이스 다 범바도 되는 땅이 있어 그래서 범바도 봐 최에서 슈도도 카지 소소는 범바 매야 저 말에 저거 봐 제가 그 최신 시리즈는 정신로 도저도 땅이 있어 다 뭐뭐서 지요 이 범바서 땅이 있어 지다야 땅이 있는 세도
So now we are moving into another sort of related assertion of the Chittamatrins. I'm just kind of guessing because Geshe is not reciting the root text. I don't know where exactly it is, but the sense I get is on stanza 27. Some of them are related. Okay? And in order to understand the next kind of assertion of Chittamatrins, we have to understand the distinctions between Tagyu, imputed phenomena, and Zeyu, substantially existent phenomena. Yeah, it's important to know the distinction there. For example, blue is an example of a substantially existent phenomenon or Zeyu. Why? Even if you mentally try to sort of dismantle blue, but it's impossible to get rid of the perception of blue, right? Still there is going to be perception of blue because you cannot make the blue unblue, right? Is that a new English word I made it? Okay. So anyway, that's what it is. Whereas a vase or a pot is an imputed phenomenon, Tagyu. Why? If you mentally dismantle the pot, right, you take the rim out of the pot, the belly and the bottom part, everything, then you have no more perception of the pot. They said if you dismantle it, right? So any phenomenon, as it disintegrates, so to speak, through this mental dismantling, when there is no more perception of that phenomenon, such phenomena are called imputed phenomenon. And any phenomenon through that kind of a dismantling, if they still retains the perception of that phenomenon, that's what we call substantially existent phenomenon. Okay? So Tagyu and Zeyu, important to know the distinction to understand the next part of Chittamatrins' assertion.
메당 타발 르드 추발라야 메당 르메 메장 토여도 타다 데바 요거 신호스 타고차라 데베 토여서는 라카도 동야죠 다 디바 페이지 토여 유지 말이 그 토여 시고라 나트스 토여시 아니 타베 르즈가 코로나 디 타고 룰 투자에 뒤에 타다 데바 조고 되는 이게 토요 밀 주나 토요 코나 데바 조고 그랬어. 어디 디데 매외도 토요 밀 나와데 되고 이제서 디 히도디 코나 데바 조고 그랬어. 어디 저자 아니 치료 도리 매나가 비게 the Nanga Hiba de Dendo Shigo is. Oh, this goes like that.
I don't know so. 다가지 따위에 레일이야 캔디기 시 뭐부 텐두 kuwa said what the shema kanze tayo shi shema de tamba dugo de shi
oh this is da shema tayo da jiu yin she o ro
la re
oh de ta yi mi tayo yin she ko do sa ki de den ro go ri
so with that Chitta Martins contain that the basis of an imputed phenomenon has to be truly existent. Okay, that's their big claim. Another, a basis of the imputation, so to speak, of an imputed phenomenon has to be truly existent. Yeah, so that's why they talk about how there are no externally existent objects, but the mind perceiving that is truly existent. Okay, and so in the case of mistaken perceptions, Chulshe, right? They said there has to be a truly existent basis for that. Otherwise, how could it be mistaken? You know, the two examples given are that of misperceiving a coiled rope as a snake, isn't it? Right? A coiled rope under the given condition is misperceived as a snake. You know, so they said so that basis. Right, the coiled rope under that given condition is truly existent, although the perception of that as a snake is not. Are you with me? Right? In the same way, an effigy that looks like a man, right? The effigy as a basis has to be truly existent, but misperceiving the effigy as a human is not. That is how Chitta Martins contend. That's why we say there are no externally existent objects, but the mind is truly existent. Okay? So every imputed phenomenon has to have a basis of imputation. That basis has to be truly existent. Okay. You want me to repeat it one more time slowly, right? Because I know this is like that. So Chitta Martins are saying, mind only, that the basis of imputation, dakshi, of an imputed phenomenon, tarye, has to be truly existent. Okay? Right? Because imputed phenomenon is not truly existent, right, according to their school. Right? Imputed phenomenon is not truly existent, but its basis is. And the examples they give is, like say, a coiled rope looks like a snake. Maybe these days, why we talk about that fake snake, right? That really looks fake snake. That fake snake is the basis, and that has to be truly existent. But misperceiving the fake snake as a real snake, that is not truly existent. That is an imputed phenomenon. Okay? Same thing, an effigy, look-alike man. Geshe said in Tibet we used to have a lot. He thought maybe in America we don't have it. Probably not. But, a look-alike man we call effigy, toyor, right, is truly existent. But misperceiving that as a real human is an imputed phenomenon, and it does not exist truly. So that's how Chitta Martins make the distinctions. Okay.
Oh, this is Kete Chunangi Koas, Chuki Deba, Deniba, Telene, Hindi Medeba, Medina, the Dirk, Dana Chewe, Nanga Danjawa, the Bengo Meva Jula, Tetan Suyang, Koa Chima dance, Chuayang, Megwa Menjiro Henas. Oh, there's a sense of this quite deba motors, quite deba motor, in Dumasi Nagaji Barikoso. Dumasi station, corner yard, Korea, Jusan, Dungan, call to yourself, direct, Cody and Namja, the Lard of this, because she called a Mary. Could you ever down? Quite the Ranchi, you ever get Honshi Chagorwa?
And so I think we are dealing with stanza 27. It has 4 lines, right? So Chitta Martins assert that samsara, korva, single existence, is truly existent. Okay? And otherwise, samsara will be just like what they called unproduced space. It is not. Right? For them, remember, they said the samsara has to truly exist. Otherwise, you cannot talk about the causes of being in samsara or getting out of the samsara. It really has to exist. It has to exist truly, right, according to the Martins, Otherwise, we can't talk about getting out of the samsara or getting into the samsara. Right? That's their contention.
nga tome de garsen sem nga si ne ko chue sa ra ko chue sa da ti do da ya yongjo chue go ya beba shi go ya maris se de ko de ta de me che ne de do ye shi ne sim shi ko du ge nyo ya chue ya na sha de che ji la de da tang bo ko chue chue sha de ti ne ko chue ya de so sa da nam nyam se ne go ya yo maris so this is what I call it.
So Geshe-la's explanation, I think, pertains to stanzas 28 and 29 on page 145 of the Stephen Batchelor's translation. So we know that Chitamatrins assert that mind or Sem is truly existent, and there are no externally existent objects, no Chidan. Okay? But that's not feasible according to Prasangika Madhyamikans, because conventionally, there is a distinction between subject and object, right? That duality exists, And now if you go along with your assertion that mind is truly existent, but objects don't exist externally, so that means that the mind itself is free of the stains of duality, isn't it? Which means the mind is already liberated, it's already enlightened. So what's the point of all these presentations about your practice and everything? There's no need. From the get-go, mind is already enlightened and liberated. So what's the point of accumulating merit, right? Accumulating wisdom and engaging in practice, and the whole presentation path and result is meaningless and useless, right? So therefore, it's not feasible. Because by your assertion, the mind exists solitarily and alone, like a lonely, right, phenomenon. Nothing is there because no external phenomena, just mind alone exists. So mind is just one lonely reality, and that's also free of all dualities. So that means that should be already enlightened or be pure. And so what's the point of all this practice and presentation, everything you're talking about, right? It's just all meaningless.
What did I love my goonies of the Tabang was? That's Suba, love my goonie, be a Tabang by me. Suba the Lena Tomoni, you must come heat, Della Simza so nari. Oma, she does your Shimeva. They know Jimata with them and baby. Then a baby, Papa, that is Shinayam. Go at you there. Go back, Mina. You are the sailor. You move on, so you go, you are doing a young milk there. Did I see there now? You move the double, you move double to the Minjuro. You did see, said young. Come, say, you must run ye. You may permit to my tea, say. Quand Dieu me permet, non, c'est de permet de tomber mousson de toi, Dieu me permet de longs jours de son nom de là, de se va pour Dieu m'a qui y est, Shabbat, Dieu à ton. Tu es une tambour de tout son là, et ne ton les mères, so, so those that cause Oma will call Lama Oma Sagi, gets a here, Oma loves her, or tell her, you did to go a kayaman, so this way. Because there were Oma Ba, Chuaje, Chuatabje, Rajime, they do your mother with their papa. The Shina Govachi here, this is that your mother will say, here, till Govaka Medus.
No, sir.
Go back, Mudan Harris, go minute, you are the sellers. Now go over to tell for college of Jet and the Kalima to tell, and Toda, you are the station. You move on, so go by you are doing a miracle. Today she was that you move on. You move over Jota Minjuro. You did this, you make a run, you may permit to see itself. Can't you? Permet de longe de rong son de son de la dit 东边那个是有没有方面的龙舟龙的松呢？那么得了，第18部有没有看见？啥玩意儿？同啊呢？最近的他我推送了点的东西就同啊张每位说写这都是还是就现在就是国外没有写的，然后嘛国外没有看的是呢，就嘛看个这是个事儿的，可能个因为旁边没什么嘛，一般的还得过来的，还过来的现在得了，这个旁边那边现在旁边的，那么我说多讲，就没旁边的龙舟龙的双人娘的得了，第18部就嘛看已经下把讲完就啊，同样那时候，就嘛看可能最小的，最近呢，通过推送了点呢。东西同样这里面说写这都是，还是有没有方面的龙舟是那样的了？这小部有没看见些下把就同样呢？最近通过推送了的东西同样这里面说写这都是东西噻，他同时噻怕那么这把东西，同大个前面多大都要么是。现在有没有方面几把人？现在第一次像人我们现在的国呢，第你们都要到要有的讨厌没读书，这是。
So we are on page 145 of the Stephen Batchelor's translation, and you can read the big caption there, establishing as the path the knowledge that deceptive truths are like illusions. Right, that is the a session of Prasangika Madhyamikans. Okay? So now, Chitta Martins and Mind Release School are taking the issue with Prasangika Madhyamikans' standpoint that all phenomena are just like an illusion. And so with that, as an example, Prasangika Madhyamikans established the Madhyam mark, right, the middle way of the path. Now, Chitta Martin said that you talk a lot about this middle path, which is just useless and meaningless. You said that everything's like an illusion, right? So it's just a useless, like minutia you're talking about, right? And so the argument they make is, you use the example of a magician who creates an illusion, in this case, a beautiful lady, right? And the magician knows this beautiful lady is not a real lady, right? He just, artificial created. But nonetheless, he's attached to her. He wants to date her. But Geshe didn't say it. I just put that, right? Because he wants, So if all phenomena are like an illusion like that, he still has attachment to that. So your middle path is just a baloney, It has no meaning. That's what the Chitta Martins of Mind Release School are telling the Madhyamikans, Yeah, you said that a magician can create a beautiful lady, but he knows that I created is not a real lady, but still he has a desire for her. He wants to date her, There's no date, as I said. And so he still has the delusion. So that illusion is not helping him to get rid of the delusion. So your middle path is that, so that's just a baloney and purposeless. Right? That's what the Chitta Martins are saying.
Yuma kengi denzi mabang be shaba jawa temba, tonyi toba kumbe denzi pangba teba temba. Pangbe se jibu namba medo be ishi zhongwa temba, so diri da tonyi kondi ya denzi do togo resi. Yuma kengi di kare sana, ko do mita kare, yuma di ko yume pimi to demba songdi warwa. Seta ko denzi mabang inza digi, yume pimi shaba jawa resi. Da tonyi to sana, ene de chakwa bang doris, odi kesi yo. Teba si tonyi toba komba le denzi bang ba teba si. Bang be jibu number me do ishi zhunga teba wasa. Dati ene denzi bang so na ene number me do tonyi toba ishi ko yunga karwa. Odi teba song yo si wata kaji. Yuma can't go you may put a shower jet, called Denzima for the Jigoris. Don't you go to don't you do the Kuba touches on any called Denzi should do it, Denzi Bond over was. She that the low my Guba Maris, low my coma, then Denzi Bond to race. This was it. The bus, Bombe, number middle, he joined the bus. Denzi Bond, that Namjero, Milan Toro, or this was it. A number of
So now Prasangika mathematicians are kind of giving three-pronged response or three-point response to the Chitamatrins. So you are saying that our claim that all phenomena are like an illusion is a baloney and it is meaningless. And you bring us this example of how a magician creates a beautiful lady and he knows that she's not real, but still he's attached to her. So his understanding of her as not real is not helping to overcome the desire, right? So if your middle path is that's just a baloney. That's no meaning, okay? And so Prasangika mathematician said, like, you missed the whole point here, right? What we claim is that if you realize shunyata or emptiness, and you familiarize your mind with that, you can get rid of grasping at true existence. Okay? In the case of the magician, right, knows that she's not real because he created it. Just knowing that the illusory woman is not a real woman is not emptiness. You know, the magician has not realized emptiness. That's why he is still attached to her. Right? He still has grasping at true existence. And so understanding that his magical creation as a not real woman is not emptiness, you know. So that's why our middle path, you know, it is meaningful, right? It can uproot the grasping at, true existence. So once you realize it, the second point is that then you, through alternating between being in a state of meditative equipoise and being in the post-meditation period, that's how, right, you progress on your path, right? Because you're alternating between being in the meditative state and being out of the meditative state, right? Once you have realized that, you know.
마방이 된도 된서 맞잖아. 유메 품이 제 동바라 도장. 유메 품이 통하는데 대노 대동이 도베세. 박사 녀슈와 니데 대지던 진단 경험이 실 된시 들라 네베 네바 도송이나 대 유메 품이 대 된도 된서 뭐 보면은 베소 Dene nyumu be paja sheba telas nyumu rangi ringda jeni je sauna shaba da nina chebe paja ji shira la shaba yejang dene dinzi ni la shawo so da nyumu paja se dinzi ni la shawo se de nyumu pume ki tomba ni nize tomba tongi tomba Yimbe, di nyumu bo menula. Omebe luji se lula chabe, tongi do goba. Togabe, di nyumu bonibe, chebar junga, mename, chebar junga, mename, de lenyang, teta ze rigso, nyamna. 미리데 주메 부메 이동바 잠지니 가자 참고 가봐라对샤니 샤베 니제 돈이 잠다 그 감당 저 니제 돈이 잠야 샤바 니제 돈이 잠야 또바 많이데 뒤또바네 니 Jume pume deme to goshi. Kede jume pume deme da shu karuchi shu kendi deme semingina Tini shi shin la yang, denpa yu me, loka shokwa tsam je, loka shokwa tsam je, deme de to nyun je. Chu jik deme de to sebi wo de, langma la sa, den shin go mi nu pa, tindra mirik de, shi cha pa, kang ku nu shi ti shi nyi tong, ti ye ngu ku ti yi nyi di tong, shi so sung pe she ro wo se. O tiri da, Jume Pime, Kara Pime Mu Mayo Toba, take Denzi Bonto Maris, Nizel Tombaris, or Tipon Jume Pime, Demeto Wars, Shetana, Jumaki Bonto Marico, Jume Pime, Demeto Maris. That is Jitang, the Demetos and any Denzi Bonto, Denzi Bonson, Tavato race, Shetan, the Karza, the Jumaki, Jume Pime, the Pime Mayo Toba, that certainly Jumata Votas in the Kagaris or Takaji. Jume Pime, the Mayo Toba, Denzi Bonto Maris. Certainly the Devamato, I did code in Denzi Bonto, says the Queen Dagmaris.
So we are on page 146 of Stephen Bestler's translation, stanza 32. So in response to Chitta Matrin's argumentation or allegations, Prasangya Madhyamikans are telling them that the magician, the reason why he is still attached to the lady he has beautifully created is because he has still grasping at true existence. He knows that lady is not a real lady, but that's not the meaning of emptiness, In order to realize the emptiness, he has to realize the emptiness of the illusory lady, that she does not exist truly. Then that would be the realization of emptiness, which he hasn't reached, okay? And so therefore, understanding that the illusory lady is not a real lady is not an antidote to grasping at true existence, because that understanding does not directly, contradicts the mode of apprehension of true existence. And for that, you have to realize the emptiness of the illusory lady, which he hasn't yet. And why he hasn't yet? Well, one reason could be that he might have very weak imprints to understand emptiness, That weak latencies in his mind, so our claim still stands, true, that if you realize emptiness and then you familiarize with that realization, then one can attain the liberation from samsara. Okay, one can attain liberation from samsara, as is stated in the 400 stanzas of the Middle Way, Chatuk by great Indian master Aryadeva, that if you realize the emptiness of one phenomenon, really truly, then it's a matter of refocusing your mind on other phenomena, and you can easily realize the emptiness of everything else. And so when we say that phenomena are like an illusion, it's not the way you took the meaning that said realizing the illusory woman as not a real woman is the emptiness, so you have missed how we use the illusion as an example here to say that all phenomena are just like an illusion. There's a disparity between how they appear to exist and how do they actually exist, So that statement in the 400 stanzas on the Middle Way, Shibjaba, Cheduk Shedak, by the Aryadeva, what it really means is, according to Geshe-la, once one realizes the emptiness of phenomena, right, selflessness of phenomena, based upon reasoning and analysis, then it's a matter of refocusing your mind on other phenomena. You don't need to use any more reasoning, so to speak. Simply recalling the earlier reasoning that you used to realize the emptiness of a phenomenon. Now, by the power of that, you can realize the emptiness of all other phenomena. Yeah.
Oh, Dreamer Thomas, they talk about dreamer, talk to Timata, Chibati, doggy, Tindova la, Quad, Tindova la, Quad, the Rindu, Kumikusos. Or they just trees at the Tommy trees at the Mikina is at and the Toba tree is Namdo, Yigi that Yigi Shivaka, what is it? The Tommy tree is the called Tribeki the Mivatona, called Triba the Dog, Miserable your race. Trashens are not sick. So be Nazia, Chakama, Sound at the Thomas or in the Susan Samatan. Dharma saya the beer some the same to you na bill no the ranja no the yours so the go you don't because chiba the door to maris that don't you do said what did Tenzin Dorjee any target do the sin do target do the shema the ko target do me to target target do the lot the door to grace the target do me to san the jo target do the lot ranja digression what did they maris? Oh, he does all ya. Jahe meva suzu yija konaria. Oh, he kola noya de ranja. Jahe zabana de maris. So the toba tobi tricky because loto sedan of chairs.
So there's a difference in terms of removing or eliminating what we call mistaken conceptual cognitions, perceptions, and mistaken non-conceptual cognition. Okay, right, you got it right. So in the case of conceptual mistaken cognition, once you understand the reality as it is, then you can directly contradict it. The example is earlier, under the given condition, we misperceive the fake snake, the coiled rope, as a snake. Now, once we go there and find out that it is just a fake knot, right, then that earlier, right, conceptual error or the misconception is corrected, right? But that's not the same with the non-conceptual mistaken perceptions, right? The non-conceptual mistaken perception, even if you know the reality, it's very hard to go. The example given, I know it's really hard for you to understand too. I find it myself too. There's something called due to some visual error or visual problem. All right, one might say we call trashe zakon namba. These little pieces of hair is falling down. Okay, you can have that perception. So now you know mentally there's no such thing as the piece of hair falling down, but that mental understanding is not helping you to stop these visual, mistaken perceptions. Are you with me? Because that's a non-conceptual one. Are you with me? Yeah. So there's a distinction between, eliminating conceptual mistaken perceptions and non-conceptual mistaken perceptions. So that falling hair, which due to some eye condition, right, problem, you see this like hair falling apart. But then mentally there's no such thing, but it doesn't help until your eye problem is corrected. You still keep seeing it, right? in the case of seeing, misperceiving a fake snake as a snake, once it's verified, you go there, it's not a snake, that very moment, that misconception is already corrected, right? Yeah.
Seva Nye Seva Nye Kyang Mindo de Kosa Denji Tata Seva Nye Kyang Mindo de Tony Tosi Koma Dene Tar Seva Jon Kelang Base Chogi Tony Tawala Guni Meva Te Lenga Terra Jogu Judo Medo Shesos or Tirita Tejo no Konimido Tony Tosan Dizzy Days or Dizzy Days Carsa Tony Towas the Dizzy Do Tenjo Kelam Base Tony Tosan Jund Comne and Dizzy Kalakalapan Gurma Lamsa Tony Tawata Lamsa Dizzy Ponto Maris Tony Tomato Kunda de Tono Kazapan Hey, the golden court is the rims upon who the don't you talk about that? They didn't do to Maris. What this was said.
That thank you about Ramlusago again.
Oh, really?
So, Prasangika Madhyamikans have contended that realizing emptiness helps to uproot grasping at intrinsic existence or true existence, isn't it? What that really means is not like as soon as you realize emptiness, right, you are grasping at true existence taken care of. That's not what it is, because the grasping has different what we call aspects, isn't it? We have what's called kunta, the intellectually formed grasping, right? That is like abandoned on the path of seeing. But for the innately developed grasping, that requires more time, because you have to go on the path of meditation with the 9 rounds of getting rid of things, right? So that requires a lot of familiarization with your realization of emptiness. So the point is that as soon as you realize emptiness, it doesn't mean that all the grasping and imprints are taken care of, right? The intellectually formed aspect is abandoned on the path of seeing, darshan mark, whereas the innately developed with imprint has to be removed gradually on the path of meditation with all these 9 rounds of objects of abandonment, right? Yeah. So how do we differentiate between the Quindak, intellectual grasping, and Lenje, innate grasping? The innate grasping is something that every one of us has, right? That grasping at true existence. The intellectual grasping is usually, it could be due to, subscribing to a particular kind of philosophical standpoint or things like that. When it comes to whether there is such thing as nirvana or not, right? What can help us to get to the nirvana, so is there life after and life before, right? And what are the reasons? So based upon reasoning, we say there is a life before and after, right? Or that we don't believe in that. So that's more like intellectual formed conceptions. Whereas innate doesn't need reason, it just is there innately. So we will stop there today, and we welcome your questions. Do we have anything? Yeah.
Hi. Okay. A few weeks ago when I asked that question, we said, let's go ahead and wait. So I'm going to bring it up again and let's see if we can work through it. The issue of the no external reality, where the Chittamatrins are positing that there's this, basically, whatever we perceive is coming from the mind, from the imprints of the mind. They're of the same nature, they say. So it's kind of like a self-feeding loop. It just, what I see a problem with that is function. Function is a problem, from my perspective. And like, how do you posit cause and effect? How do you explain karma? And they said the self-cognizer will solve that problem, but I still don't see how the self-cognizer solves the problem of this whole presentation of no external reality. So can we go that, because every time we bring up the self-knower, they bring it back to memory. But what is memory aside, how's that solve the issue of function?
Function?
Function, yeah, karma, cause and effect. Because if it's coming from the mind, what's the point of anything functioning, really?
Sure.
I mean, it's all like imagined on the inside.
Yeah, thank you. Mora kandi shue di insa da kazan tindra khasing ni chi shue do wagen. Chene ta tanda samsam be log la ya da chidwen shegi yomar wagen. Chidwen she yomar ngado karso chiro tendo na da de semgi ta karso pa tresha jores wagen. Ko ma chi chidwen seng ji yomar la wagen. And di imba on the tamba ina ane le kunde sta namsha che tede wagen. Di kande se de go resa wagen. And concept tanda pena rangri pejo chene den le kunde yube kimjen she de di tanda Quran ya kowa de ya ko sha ma son sa ge. La rangri di roage. Rangri di gi ton chene pena che tamje chiden meben che tamje so chaje te de roage. Le kunde se gen yo rowa. Sa an senza be le kunde se di kande de go re rangri dubje de kun le kunde yo islam na di tanda ya ko ko ma son sa roage. O di session ay yana ge.
Ale.
Get sense.
시도 메시아 세워라.
that chidwen shegi yomar wage da dida ha gozon sa da chidwen shegi mebe ina chaje tebe jogor wage chodam chaje tebe yorwa dina le jumde segen yorwa sa ge jaza le jumde yobdi samza be contest du go resa rangri dubje de kun le jumde yor slamna wage di jawar abadan di kujur of the ramason this sessions now na su said
oh this is the le jumde yor de sena le jumde se apike chiro thon jo de shawo mo sem gi Because Shashi is so to show the legend you just said there. Some girl Pasaka, and this in some corner get on sheet of jail said, you can lie by Piggy. Suzo now there's on Chia did about Shuma business power, so Piggy chatting these legs. Lea did Paya never did Chungo did never part your. Didn't she? You to do Naza same gig by Shashi and Chills for non the similar my leg you did your money.
To do some lot that can check and the same pasa part. So I mean going with the Chittamatrins assertion, right? How they posit law of karma and results. So exactly in the same way they said it's all mental projections, happiness and suffering. They don't externally exist. It's just like mental projection. Like the example Geshe I remember giving last time is like, say, if we switch torch put on the wall, then everything's illuminated, isn't it? Looks like everything's bright there, but that brightness is really coming from here, right? Projected, So like that, everything we experience, good and bad, right, including karma, right? The karma that we create is in the nature of mind imprints. When that's activated, then the result is also in the nature of the mind. So everything, according to Chittamatrin, is explained by the same, right, standpoint. Yeah.
Yes, but what does self-cognizer have anything to do with it?
No. Rangri le ya any chudor karere sa rangri injimis de temba zam chigo ji yeme keja de tanda de chwe tamje da chwe sa ke sem temba druba di kaso da dubje ko es rangri di kar le jumde namsa share jumje yar yamar sa ke sem zam
la rangri sa de ga de zorda rangri de ga kar se de se ga la ba pe de ngon zo chi da tenjo tu mo re 예, 유공부 통마니나 저 예공부 통도 제바자 용어라. 대매가 나시 but once me give Jerry so you. You won't take it. Won't take the ones me yam to drink it. Young me told say, Gas, I drink to her. Said the one boy, Tongi me yam to you to drink water. But they tell you that said that Chebaja is making you want with dog over this river. But the one more tell you over Tongi Lord over. But this is the moment once me Chebala. Yeah, once me don't get lost Google. Once me gonna give it to you so in the cut on dig a wrong what tell them you go is this or that's tell you as in Tragomers. You the Eugene what the draw your is you go over to the Eugene me get a young to change to but you you Shiva again dog maris. You go over for a travel.
The question, what the Morangi to what the Kadu Lane Javana, can the Rangi said, deep in the late Junta Sosongalia, late to do careers similar chamber corner or again. That the quiet Rangi said or again. Yamaka Tuga Shuma and the Rangi then chain or Yakusan and Tingo again. It is by Jason to go late Junta again.
This is what I lay you need to buy. Tell you and that's in lay you the killing or lay you the bed to see your mother. You are the lay you the young that you don't saw the person. Simultaneous. But the churros to gain the by the part. Simply, Korangi Karsa. Nobody was passing out Georgie Margie. Simply dreaming in the Marisi.
Okay, so I was trying to see how, Geshe might try to explain the self-cognition with the long-term reference, but he's not going there anymore. But I think I get a sense of what it is. But let me translate what Geshe said exactly, right? So that I don't dilute, and then I'll add my footnote, right? See, but that answers your question directly, right? That's our cultural difference, So Geshe said, where really Siddha Martins feel the need to assert self-cognition, Rangri, is to do with recollecting everything that happened in the past, good and bad. Without self-cognition, we will not be able to remember anything or recall anything, right, good and bad, right, just like we talked before, right. Both Siddha Martins and Madhyamikas agree that in order to recall that you have seen blue, right, the perception that blue has to have already happened, isn't it? Then you can recall it. They both agree with that. But the Siddha Martins say that now in order to recall the perception of that blue, right, then you have to have a self-cognition of that perception. Otherwise, how can you recall the perception itself? But the Madhyamikas say there's no need for self-cognition. Once you remember the blue, together with it, right, the perception of the blue is also recalled, right? So that's the whole debate about it, okay? So that's what Geshe was saying. So now this is my footnote. I think if I can connect it, hopefully, if I make mistake, that's my mistake. If I get, maybe I should get some kudos. But before that, Geshe said something that in case of Siddha Martins, that whole law of karma and action is the mental projection. There are no externally existent conditions, right, help making us create good and bad karmas. There's no such thing. Okay? Everything's coming from within. Right, okay. Now my footnote, I think where perhaps if somehow we try to connect the self-cognition, the law of karma and action is, like if you remember any good and bad karmic experience before, right, what would happen? I think that remembrance is because of that cognition, self-cognition. Otherwise you cannot recall the good and bad karmic experience you had before, right? Are you with me? So that's my connecting to the thing, right?
Well, first of all, Geshe never said that self-cognizing awareness has anything to do with function.
Oh, that's
so
right.
that was your assumption.
That's right.
So but it's actually here he explained that the reason they posited self-cognizing awareness is to explain how, according to them, the mind and the object are the same substance. In that sense, because of that, the Madhyamikas asks a question: then what sees what? There have to be a subject and object. According to them, there is no subject and object. That's why they posit self-cognizing awareness. And it's not that they posit it because they need to explain memory. To the contrary, it's the other way around. Memory proves that self-cognizing awareness exists. Because if it did not, then memory would not be possible. But it's not that they posit it in order to explain how memory functions. You understand what I'm saying? It's the other way around. It's you know, once they posit it, it's because they need to posit it another mind, which is not the same as the object. So they posit itself. Then the Madhyamikas ask again, then how can you prove that? And they give the example of memory to prove that. Otherwise, they say if there is no self-cognizing awareness, that the memory would not function. You understand what I'm saying? But the reason is not that again going back to the it's not that
the function.
It's not necessary to explain function.
Yeah, function. Yeah, Geshe didn't say anything about function or connecting to the law of cause and karma. Right. That's right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Can you translate that?
Sure. Ale disigure morangi tagi kandishugure sena more samlolia ane chire tende duba ke marana roage samzamba roage ane kasa le junde namsa kande shagre roage e more samlana la rangri second le junde namsa shaye jil roa ko jumze de jusa de chen roage ene ko sena geng dik di ka chetamje ke chaje dube chedu ko rangri second ke shigyo mare roage samzamba di shigyo roage 쉐탐제기 자제 태야기 제도랑 리세긴 남샤의 시기요 말에 섬잡으러게 안 가서 섬잡을 가르치기를 세빈나게 결혼서 롤이야 얘는 디도 거기서다 가서 숭진이면 되고도 와서 저도 유의 유전 생활의 니 민도 와서 지금 마시러 와게 아 내래 제배 인바이나 아니 말 가른 용바이나 디 수sem을 전해요 말에 가서나 유진 타대면을 전해게요 말어 와게 배나디 랑리 샤바이네 고 그래서 월 셈디다 그 제직도 두고 와게 어딘데 마더지 단다 kö래기 컨디션에시 레줌데기 와게 남샤야 아니 제바다 최탐제 자제 대야지도 랑리 세겐게 시고 말와서게 디다가 와게
아니 디스고다 양 정직다 뭔지 미게다 유고보니 제지 있어야지 저 제인스고 말다
맞아
제다 제지 가가라
맞아 맞아
근데 먼저 유바의 시작이这嘛是吧？统计是吧？我这个统计的这个产业线个，别多把他的没这个是吧？甚至别多把这意思我们咋样？有些多把看看的。人那个早着的，可是其实有苏州是刚刚西边当着是怕破的，你是什么是西边罗是要嘛的来个，我这边就是个什么是，像个。如果我要么是我嘛的，我不要了。
알아 괜히 양주 소다 그래서 그래 근데 유용원보디 로와게 그런 원보 진짜 샘 거래 당이 제 직발을 맞아 지금 가가
그 원보도 좀더 그래서 샘그 누가 찍을 때는 좋은 거
알아 타데 그 뭐지로 똑같다더라고 그래요
뭐지로 똑같대
랍국어로 컨셉에 알아 뭐지로 똑같다대 I think Geshe wants to clarify something there, right? I mean, where he might have thought that it has something to do with how, we said Chitta Matrins, they accept the non-duality of subject and object, right? And it does not mean that subject and object are exactly one, okay? They are of the same nature, but they are nominally different. When you see blue, right, Chitta Matrins is not saying there is no blue, right? There is blue, but that blue, right, you're seeing is a projection from within, and that blue and the perception are of the same nature, but they are nominally different. They are not one, right? So Geshe wants to clarify that, okay? Right, because when we say non-dual, that might, right, give you that different sense, okay? So that's important kind of clarification, yeah. And then I think Geshe say that what he says right. I mean, the self-cognition is not asserted just to establish functionality of things or to explain the law of karma and result, anything like that, right? Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Or you need one more time to think, right? Process, yeah.
So I just had a quick question for clarification. So in the Prasangika Madhyamika view, they're saying that the perceived and the perceiver aren't even in the same nature. Is that
Oh,
true?
I see.
Because the
Right, the
Shida
blue
mantras.
and the procession of blue are not of the same nature. Is that what
Yeah.
person is saying? Okay, is
'Cause
that
like-
your question?
Yeah, because I think, did you just say that the Chitta Matran view is that
Yeah.
they say, okay,
They have the same nature but nominally different.
right, exactly.
Mhm.
So Prasangika, they're saying they're not even in the same nature.
Okay,
Is
yeah, I
that
have to check with him, right? Yeah. Quran kan shwe de dire uma tenju be la be ina ro gen yu da yu jin ni ga lo kar so ta ni chik dan the sense about devana shin ta ni ta de le go ro sa gen ro gen. That's right, yes.
Thank you very much for today's teaching. I have a question because in the conventional world, precision is very important, like an axe that strikes a tree,
Right.
or a prescription. And I find myself zeroing in on precision quite a bit. But in the sense of emptiness,
Right.
it seems very much a different thing. And I wonder if Geshe would please speak to precision as it pertains to the ultimate, an ultimate reality.
Okay, so when you said in the case of emptiness, it's different thing. What do you mean? Like it's vague, or what were you thinking?
It seems to me that if one were to contemplate or to simply relax into emptiness or calm abiding,
Right.
that precision no longer is necessary. That precision no longer matters. Is this true?
Precision.
Or on the flip side, perhaps we bring to our mind a particular concept, and we want to be very, very accurate in our understanding of that concept, that Buddhist philosophy. Would that be akin or similar to the accuracy of hitting a bullseye?
Okay, so is that the precision exists with emptiness or not? Is that the question, right?
If that's possible
Okay,
to
sure.
translate. It could be distinction, yeah, exactly. I don't think. I don't.
So in light of
Yes, correct. So if I don't think anyone will ever hit a perfect bullseye, right? Because there's no way you'll always go smaller. So, however, a concept can be fully understood, and like take for example, I guess emptiness would be a Buddhist concept that can be understood. So I guess my question, or one of the frustrations that I run into is trying to zero in or perfectly pinpoint a idea.
what emptiness is?
Yeah, what emptiness is, and so
Precisely,
forth.
right?
Yeah, precisely. Yes.
Okay, so I understood that. So what was the distinction in in light of emptiness? We couldn't make differences with any phenomena. Is that part of your question or not?
Yes, that actually does. That would be a really good way to look at it. Is in emptiness, it would be very hard to distinguish one thing from another. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Quran tering ge sungjo dige di ale thoche shugun sarwage. Nam dene da tering sungjo ne chidu ka Quran la da ka la gore sem nan da jigze di dus ke nam ju nganzo da chö khar khar yimbe ina ko karen di chik re sidu ka ya ko pe tha chobor chorwage. Ko takta zlai yorwage. Di ne nyugo ne nyugo re srwage teben teb res lai chorwa. Tongba nyele cha sidu ka dinde me te gar skora samatan darwage. Di res chorwage. Dugu zu me te gar. Takara rwa cha chi ba. Sidu ka ko sebu sogbar wege. Dinde dosa gar rwage. Di takta yime gen ji sung rwage. Dangana shin tongba ni ki ane 동이 갈 세번 최탐제 예와 체에 되는 거 들어가게 최강가를 찍고 지게 있는 데서 오다 디토르게 세시 나고면게 동반이 세디 치마 치신 저 또야지 열을 여마를 와게 레고 동반이라도 저저 코라라다잖아 다 가로 딘데로 지 마스로 지 충충으로 딘데 진짜래 샤데 마도 지고 와게 디레스인데 와게 다 잡으러 와게 비게 미그라 슈사데 여마를 와게 민두라고 그랬다디
very 동이 사다 그런 데서 지단데 동이 사 디레 동이 더다 샤 요데 여러분이 신의 소속 비 동이 동을 저기나 소속 또 나히지 벨해 또 말해서 마음 좀 있어도
Not really.
근데 먼저 대인서 푸른 세월 주가 있어 봐.
No.
푸른 세월도 푸른 가래도 해서 상해도 나무도 쓰기로
No.
나무 가래도 쓰나
No.
나무도 쓰지만 또 이제 그러나 그 용다는 이제 멜시아 열어서 영어로
No.
어떻게 말해 줘.
No. So. 당가서 남지다 동이 게 남사 때라 웹체데 강가로고 가서 오다 갈라 강잡들에 마다 자지 남아 코리아 라바네 시 틱야버데 라바에
자자마 남도 시에 페세워 랍도 말했어.
알레 노스토스 알레 직접. Okay, maybe this is what you were thinking, perhaps what Geshe was saying, When it comes to emptiness, of course, we try to establish emptiness, what it is, right, as best as we could, And if we're thinking in terms of precision, that once somebody non-conceptually realizes emptiness, right, that's a pinpoint precision. Could we be able to talk about it, right, as precisely? So that's the issue with emptiness, that nobody is able to, right, really articulate, however great communication skills you have or mental clarity, that you cannot explain your non-conceptual experience or realization emptiness, right, the precision to anybody else at all. So that's why it is called masam jeme, right, something that is beyond thought and expressions, right?
I'm sorry. Would the advice be to try not to engage in really trying to articulate exactly what
Sure.
emptiness is?
Okay, I'll get to that. Yeah. Then they in Nasarawakan. Tony the Chemachi she and then also the Yamona she share share as Masam German even not Tanga Tony that Tony Samatan the Yorwage. So they call the Becca Jatam, but it tick Javanese. Pen many degree or revesa that only so the air is inside there some come time at the rocket, but tick Javanese is rocket. The Masam German was again.
No, the day inside is there some good show.
No.
You see now because so long shadow no she in the middle of the sable no but the winter was combat even so that there years also thing out of your
No.
or didn't hit now Yamarasma.
So the Tasha was the Tony was on Thomas again, Tony called some tango or wage. So the Kali Yataman and dinner is inside there, some called Chashan Dram or the chicken, then when they go tick Javanese did as a lie or Marosa.
That touch you to touch you, don't you were
No, sir. No, sir. Yeah, so Geshe sense is like say, I mean, if you are going to describe this monastery, right, then we can describe it, and if we fail in a description, we can show it to people, right? This is what we are talking about. Look at this, right? But emptiness is something we cannot reveal to anybody. If you have realized this non-conceptually, it looks like frustration is you can now talk about exactly as you experience to anybody. So Geshe says that the way we deal with it is based upon right, the valid reasoning. We try to establish emptiness, right? That's like not precision as in non-conceptual realization, but that's we think, okay, that's about it, right? That's what we satisfy and try to meditate it. Once you're really certain about what is precision, then maybe you realize emptiness at that point. That's what Geshe was saying. Okay, right, yeah. So, sorry, so, okay, I have something.
Can I add something?
Okay, yeah, sure.
Just the issue of precision, I think before we get to non-conceptual awareness of emptiness, I think we talk about precision in identifying the object of negation, and in that case, precision is very much needed. Okay, so we don't relax into it. It really does require a sharp edge, and if we're not seeing, we're just not seeing it. It just requires more work. So it's not like it's like some open space or something. There is an object of negation that does need to be precisely identified. I'm just adding.
Ala morang discore ta tongbanyi ang sam ta dikala ta thanda gakjang munji che nen ga re srawage gakjang munji che sabata tagar la sem sha ma to ya tongni komgu yola ne sem dinde jik tongba ri na li ngeso jabde dinde mare la go di ta ga srawage
가자 무지로
no
돈이도 돈이 거라 가자 내만 돈도 가져 줘 어디 이 체도 로드 하고 다 되면 하고 말아.
Yeah, so it's important for us to have as best as we could like clarity about identifying the object of negation, right? So once we know if things where to exist intrinsically and truly, this is how they should exist, right? We have to be quite clear with that. And then, when we see the absence of that, that's where we rest our mind, right? That's all we can do. We cannot get more precision than that, so to speak, at this point, right? Okay.
So in that sense,
Yeah.
back to the original question, the answer would be not that we should not try to articulate what happiness is,
Right,
but
sure,
the
sure.
opposite, we should try to articulate as much as possible.
Right.
So it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the fact that once you realize you cannot articulate it, but
Right.
in order to
Right.
you have to articulate as
That's
much
all
as
we can do,
possible.
right? This is why we say the words fail, isn't it? We do, right? Yeah.
They write all these texts.
Right. Kurang di segure tongyi di ngusum de dao men xin en ta de dao bei jue de yao ma de ni ne de ni ga yong yue ji da tongyi xie de ge wa ge tongyi dao wen li men na nga zhe xiong qiang bu de ge kuai me zhe cha ge le sa ge tongyi guo ge xie men na wa ge right, yeah, so Geshe is saying, there are many good reasons, right, that we could use, right, as part of our meditation and analysis, right? That's what we're doing. Okay, so I have one prayer request, and which is a repeat from previous one, but we will do that. Again, Thume Jimji Shue Di, the Kazanji Shui, Nenarwa, that to Buddha Karo is a Rawagin, Fem Ti Kang Sarwagin, there Thume Jimji Narona. So we request this before Fem Ti Kang or Kang is not doing really well health wise, so we do pray for her and others that we know. Toje la nyombe jomden de senzan tebe ngendun dunge sen duzon nese sanje menja bindro ya ye vela chanze lo de ta om bekaze ma bekaze ranza samuka de so Tenda om beganze ma beganze ranza samunga de so gewa de nyodo da membe gewo rubjo lowa jeja ma le ba de sa ge bara sho lo de jaze e ron be ba de kesa ponve chudo memba temba zela wando jije chanye sho so wan de ma wan da me gunjian dong wan de gang li zhong zuo nian da sen zhe zhang gen jia wa nie wa yao se jian zhang song din zi ma bei xi ba din jian ye wei yin guo zhe bei jian xie jie nie gun chang zhuo dian zhe long da lang zhe bei 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 yun jian du jia jia zhe gun do xiao dian Tenzin Dorjee zombe ze yongzo yure tobe nyage longri dejen nebe beden toden kanri nabo shabden sho dona kongmen zewa namda tendan robe penden jongwe she pendo yumin shebe chen gesan duje dendo shabden sho chizuen lamen toge men Geshe Gyeltsen Tenzin Zongmen Du Chozon Todo Jidon Du Chida Memben Dungwe Lun Du Sho Rangja Shinge Gongbo Tseba Me Zodo Namje Genyong Zhokwa Chozo Zeye Lazo Tamje Je Dade Mi Shi Shoge Ngodo Tubden Jida Losan Jawa Shiro Demban Zebe Beyun Je Tande Deje Kyungbe yang zhe yi jie hong bo so wa de jik den sun ge cha na be me den bia za wa so so ta wa ye nam da chu ji yang da lang ba lo san ye den be do sha de tu zhong jia jie non zi yang be xin sam zhuo nam zhe sang zin zhong be gong zhuo xi la song zhuo de be den bia nga da qian bo sha de shuo che be dong wa ko wa bo do zhen be ri lan si yue bong da jie che be dun den le xie zhang zhe ke zhu xin ye qian bo sha de shuo ke be lang du gu xie zai de zhen be cha ra nian zuo rang sa ga sang be di jie ri guo yi xie shom de xin ye qian bo特上多郎学为天地界民众大觉藏灭世界拉见这点天对别晓天地新业进步小点说初中教我世界前了头天当今送灭错了大家拉上大别天别其他两个人都说常住生着人不见马也不能也有也不娘不没不国内广东别不说东年大瓦人不见马也不能也有也不娘不没不国内广东别不说啥些别些就是没多长瑞绕领先年的延邦的商业，周围那大型了就把说刚的绕边过了边新港做平塘的话马路中边，现在是往天津家族，下边10:8点就接一趟过路人。曼德拉个尼样的呀民也话更多样的拉曼当人们去也别了龙居萨达浪杰原点让做年多的长年过把牛多